Yeah,
And I think we're live.
we are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm not sure if anyone's here yet watching us, but welcome to Shred Book Joy. And this is our first, it's not your first Reading the Globe video, Katja, but it's my first Reading the Globe video. So this is our live discussion around The Forgotten Book, which was our first book in our Reading the Globe YA read along. So it was back in January, February. So you and I have been trying to think about whether we remember the story properly, but I'm sure as we get chatting about it, we will. I can see some people are here.
Oh,
Welcome.
that actually is me.
Oh,
I
it's
didn't realize
you.
I was going to come up as a different person.
I was thinking there's some people here, but yes. So if like you're watching and you're someone who normally watches Spread Book Joy and you haven't seen Katja before, Katja's lovely channel, Page Turners with Katja, is really wonderful. Katja's so thoughtful and wonderful with her reviews, and she does a lot of work on translated fiction. And so yeah, and that's why we're doing this, isn't it? We're celebrating translated and global fiction, and this is our YA middle
Don't
grade element.
stop. Don't stop. Carry on. I'll
Yeah.
just keep
So
listening to all the amazing stuff I do.
yeah, welcome. No, you do tons of stuff. So yeah, welcome to the channel. So I'm glad to have you on here. I can see we do have someone here, Natalie. Let's see. Hello, Natalie. Hello. um, right. So the book we're going to be talking about is, and actually I did have it up on my iPad, but is The Forgotten Book. Yay, that's what it looked like. So this was our first choice, and for the Reading the Globe, and I think it's our only YA. I feel like the others are more
I
middle
don't
grade.
think so. I no. Well, you're right. The next one is so. The next one that we're starting, or it has started, hasn't it? Yes. So this is the April, May. This one is definitely very much middle grade, but I do have a feeling. Now I have to jog my memory.
I feel like
Let's have a quick look.
the Prince of Mist is more YA, maybe.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I think that is. Do you know what? I'm happy with that. I kind of feel like sometimes as an adult that I connect more with middle grade than I do with young
Same,
adult.
absolutely. And I suppose not to skip ahead too much on this. I kind of feel the same with this. Like I enjoyed my reading of it, but I don't know. Like you say, there's something about middle grade that has a bit more. I think it's when they're not negotiating these teenage fraught relationships, which
Yeah.
um yeah, I kind of it's something that doesn't really always work for me, depending on how it's done, I suppose.
Yeah,
Um,
so definitely middle grade does feel more universal because you take that element out of, the teenage angst,
mhm,
like I,
yeah.
I do like young adult, but definitely you can connect a lot easier to middle grade.
Oh, completely
Like
agree.
that.
Yeah, because they're not navigating. They're not sort of newly minted or trying to be nearly adults. So, like you say, it's much easier, I think, to connect with it because yeah, teenage angst is a very specific type of thing to read about. And the thing about YA as well is like it is a marketing category in terms of like I always feel like YA to me it's become this really broad term, and actually encompasses quite a big range of ages. Whereas, like it used to be for me, like this kind of fits into more of the teen bracket of YA,
Yeah.
which is it's good to know because it's not got a lot of it's not spicy or anything like that. So it's not that type of YA book, which I
Yeah.
was glad about as
I
well.
think I think for a while, new adult was sort of like catching on, but then the differentiation isn't there as much now, and especially when you get into genres like fantasy, which just really is because you got. I was kind of thinking about it. Is it magical realism or is it fantasy? And I kind of feel like it's if we say magical realism, it's definitely leaning far more into that fantasy area.
Mm, yeah, I think so. I think I would say I don't know. I think as a fantasy reader as well, it was definitely full of fantastical elements. So more than magical realism, because I think there's sort of an explanation behind some of the things that happened, albeit not necessarily 100% what we wanted explained. But for me, magical realism always kind of smacks of, like, I don't know, kind of a little bit airy fairy and magic for the sake of it kind of thing, whereas this kind of had a real purpose to it for the story as well. So yeah, but YA, the interesting discussion for me around YA is, I've always said there are books that are YA that are marketed as YA that are just good books, and then there are books that are YA that are marketed as YA and they feel like YA, you know. So this,
Yeah.
I think for me, this was kind of falling into that category, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. And do you feel, because it was the German translation, wasn't it?
Mm.
So we've got all the different languages. In fact, do we have any overlapping ones? Yes. So we got the German translation again in August.
Yeah.
But this particular one, I was thinking to myself, I don't really feel that it's particularly German in
No,
feel.
yes, I concur with you on that, because the whole thing, because also she's like half English, isn't she? And it
Yes.
felt very much like an English boarding school story. Like, you
Yes.
placed it in England, you know, and
Yeah.
I don't think, like you said, there was, aside from them like going into town and getting a beer maybe at her age, there was nothing very German about it, apart from
Yeah.
the name of the castle and some of the characters' names. It just felt like an English boarding school story in a sense.
Yeah.
So
And that was the impression that I had. I was like, I don't really get the sense of that. And it kind of reminded me, so I used to have audiobooks that were spoken in German, but they were about a British boarding school. In fact, there was two. There were the Enid Blytons. There was like Mallory Towers, and then there was the other one. And they were both boarding schools. And I was getting that vibe. I was like, I wonder if she grew up on the same audiobooks. I think she's younger than me, though.
I can hear on echoing in your background there. I don't know if it's my,
Let me
if it's
let
your.
me turn down my sound.
Yes, I think that's better. I think. Can you hear me all right?
Hopefully,
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
I can hear you. Okay. Am I still echoing?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I can kind of hear myself, but it might be because I haven't got. But normally I don't put headphones in, but it might be I need to. So let me know. I'll give it a go if I need to.
And Natalie's got a comment.
Oh yes, I can see Natalie. Hi. Let's have a look. So yeah, anyone who's watching who read the book, let's have a little think about those questions. All I read is fantasy or classics. At a point in my life where I don't want to read about real life relationships, and I love middle grade YA. My face. This was perfect for you then. It's like a combination of, and to be fair, perfect for me in terms of the storyline and the genres, because fantasy is my favourite genre. And then I love classics, of course, and I'm a huge fan of Jane Austen. So when you proposed this book, I was just like, this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
sounds really good.
I was wondering how she was going to do the Jane Austen elements, and it was slightly different from what I expected, but it was still nice. It was kind of like an Easter egg, wasn't it? Every time you kind of figured out which character this was supposed to be. I mean, Darcy was very easy to tell
Of
who
course.
he is supposed to
And
be.
Emma.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was this kind of so actually Natalie says there's still an echo. Natalie, I can't hear it anymore, but if there is still, just let us know again one more time and I'll plug in my headphones. But yeah, so I didn't hear yeah, I didn't know how much she would kind of allude to the books, whether it would be like a nod to one of the books or whatever. I was quite pleasantly surprised by that idea of this being these Easter eggs for different books that you could find. So yeah, so that pleased me quite a lot, and also the fact that she didn't like it. Some of it was spelled out, like you said, Darcy, Emma, but some of it wasn't. It was quite subtle, you know.
Yes.
So like the two aunts getting letters from their niece all the time, you know. So which of course was from Emma. And I should say we're going to have massive spoilers. So for the book, just in case before we start going into it. There are going to be massive spoilers for the book and possibly spoilers for Jane Austen, maybe, if you've not read them. And whilst a lot of people think classics don't, you know, everyone knows the classics, I personally hate having spoilers for classics. So Yeah. I'm just going to warn now. There's going to be huge spoilers. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I
some
thought
of
I
the
liked that part
characters.
of it, that element. I thought it worked really well.
I
Yeah.
think Emma was kind of a mashup. She was more than Emma, though, wasn't she? Because she was kind of Elizabeth too.
Yes, she was kind of Elizabeth Bennet. I mean, the Emma was kind of like her living situation, really, which being her dad. But then also she was like poor, like an Elizabeth Bennet. Like she wasn't like rich. She was at the boarding school because her father worked at the boarding school. And I'm trying to think if that is like any of her other characters. The only other poor one I can think of might be Fanny Price, who's kind of relying on the goodness of her relatives and things like that. But she wasn't really like Fanny Price.
I
Um,
think there's also the Moorland, because she wasn't very rich, because that's the whole thing about
Catherine Morley,
Northanger. Yeah, the Northanger Abbey one,
yeah.
because
And yes, you're right. You're right. Yes.
money came into that one a lot about who's rich and who isn't.
Yeah, of course. And she basically, the Catherine Morland, like the love of books and reading, because there was at one point where she, when they're trying to set up the library, and she's like got this vision of them having this club, and they're gonna like they're doing film club or whatever. But she was talking about, it's one of the things that I started doing some highlights in it, and then I just stopped. But one of the things I highlighted was said, yeah, in winter we'll have a fire, drink tea, and read the classics while the grandfather clock strikes the hour. It will be lovely and cozy, which is, it's kind of like this idea of reading and stories and everything else that was in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. And we've got someone else here. Literary layer. Hello, hello. So welcome, welcome. So our overall thoughts. So what kind of, we've had a little bit of a talk about it. So what were your overall thoughts on the book, Katja?
So I think it delivered what I was kind of expecting, and I also had a quick look to see what the title was in German, the original title. And so even before they mentioned the fawn in the book, I knew there was going to be a fawn because in German it's called Emma, der Fawn und das vergessene Buch.
Ah,
So the forgotten book is just the last bit in the German one, and it kind of tells you more that she's Emma and there's going to be a fawn. So I was like, okay.
okay, yeah. So interesting. That's really interesting. That kind of almost gives it away a little bit, doesn't it? Because I hadn't got a clue about this. The fawn. Think it was kind of hit. There was was there a statue of the fawn at the start, and there was little hints about it, but that came
Yep,
on a bit later, so it was kind of a bit more of a surprise in English translation.
yep,
Yeah, and you were saying about, we'll go back to what you were saying about the boarding school stories. I know they were huge in Germany, the Enid Blyton boarding school stories, and I remember from talking to Claudia about, like, she grew up reading them in Germany as well, and she said there were an absolute ton of
oh
stories
yeah,
based on the Enid Blyton boarding school stories. They were hugely popular, so it does have that feel to it, doesn't it?
yep,
Mm. Right. So my overall thoughts on it, really, I suppose it was kind of, I really enjoyed the fact that it was such a light read at the time. It was just what I was in the mood for, actually. And like you, I listened to the audiobook of it as well, and I thought the audiobook was very good.
yep, yeah. I can't remember who narrated it, but it was good.
Have a look at
Um,
it.
I think the only time that I was like, oh, I hope this doesn't get too much focused on relationships because it's that sort of age group where I'm not as interested
Yeah,
in them sort of like having a relationship was fairly early on. There was this dance, and it kind of related to the dance I think at with the Bennets and Darcy, and he's a bit rude and everything, but
yeah, Netherfield, the Netherfield Ball. Yeah,
yeah, and but the way they did it was really good because it was quite cringe. It's just like, oh no, this does feel very like a high school dance. I hope we don't have too many more of these, and we didn't. But I
really.
mean, it did it well if you think about it. So initially, I was like, oh, this is cringe, and then I was like, well, it does, mirror the
Yeah,
storyline, so that's
yeah,
quite clever.
yeah. It did, and the good thing was, what I liked was it did have like scenes and some characters and some plot points, I suppose, based on the storylines of the Austen books, various Austen books, but didn't follow any one of them too closely. So you just didn't know exactly how it was all going to turn out, really. Aside from, I suppose, the love interests part where you have this Wickham character and the Darcy character. I suppose apart from that, that was kind of obvious how that was going to turn out. But
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
So this we can look at this a little bit later, but talking about that, I kind of felt that the way she did the structure of what sort of echoes Jane Austen, those are the elements of the book that I felt sort of like tied up really, really well at the end. And then I want to talk about when we're a little bit later and we go into deeper spoilers, maybe, about whether or what your thoughts are about how she sort of like tied up the elements that we've never seen before and are totally fresh for this story.
Mm. Yeah, and it's interesting actually. I think you're right. There was a kind of there is a difference between those two elements in the story for me as well. I found it very uh it was surprising, the ending, and I don't think we were alone in that. But yeah, I think those little parts that were nods to Austen, like you say, they tied off nicely. The relationship thing. Actually, the one part we were talking about a bit earlier was the niece never turning up, the Jane Fairfax niece character,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
two aunts going on and on about this niece, and then she never turns up. Um, but yeah, interesting. It's because I kind of did wonder if it was going to end up being, I don't know, that she Friedrich or someone would fall in love with her or have a secret relationship with her or something.
Yeah, yeah, because she had quite a bigger role there
Yeah.
in the originals.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I did like the setting. What did you think of the setting itself of the book? I know we're saying it's boarding school, but what did you think of the idea of this school and the
I think she did actually describe it really well. So you could imagine where certain things were, the layout. You could
mm,
imagine the grounds. I certainly could visualize her, like we just talked about her having a beer in town. I could visualize her. There's one scene where she is sprawled out on the on the ground, and I was like, yeah, I can picture that. And then, like trying to have to make her way back into the main building, sort of
yes,
thing, and it
yeah.
was all snowy and everything. So yeah, it's very evocative, the writing.
Yeah, no, I found it really, really. I love the setting, but then I just love that kind of book anyway. And actually, as a huge Mallory Towers and Enid Blyton fan, so this kind of book should have been my catnip, and I did really enjoy it. I found it really compelling to read. But yeah, there were some elements to the plot and elements to it that kind of petered out a little bit that didn't quite work in a sense. And actually, and like I said, because it falls more into that YA category rather than the sort of good book marketed as YA category. That's kind of you know where it fell for me really. In terms of the actual main plot, the Forgotten Book, that was interesting. I thought the way it was managed and the kind of moral kind of side of it, and how
Yeah,
she worked into it, like thinking about her responsibility when she's writing in the book and things like that. She was quite a moral. She was quite she had a quite a well developed sense of morals and kind of principles for someone of her age. I thought she was really quite mature in some parts, and in some parts not.
well, then we get to the part where poor Darcy has got an issue with some of the shelving in the library, and I think that kind
Well,
of
that
showed one of her immature moments.
absolutely, yeah, no, there was those parts, but like the bits with when she's writing in the book and she's having to
Yeah,
decide on things, and she's like, the power of it. Most like quite a lot of teenagers would be writing just what they want really
yeah,
in the book. So I think in that sense, she kind of, because initially when she's writing stuff, it's just to vent, isn't it? She
I
doesn't know what
agree.
the
And
power is.
she is a very sort of like thoughtful 16-year-old, and they probably, or she hints at some of her backstory about why that would be, and that would be having the dad who is kind of this hypochondriac and very anxious, so it kind of gives you the vibes of both Emma's dad and Elizabeth's mum in a way from the
And
Jane Austen books.
she has to play the parent, which
Mm.
quite happens with Elizabeth Bennet a lot, as well as Emma in
And
some.
her mother, like, Her mother was giving me the vibes of Elizabeth Bennet's sister, Lydia. Because she's kind
Yeah,
of like, woohoo, I'm in this new relationship.
yeah,
And yeah, and so initially I was like, oh, this is interesting. We've gone to Cambridge for a bit, but we didn't stay there very long because I'm familiar with Cambridge. I thought we were going to get quite a bit in the start of the book, but it was really a flying blizzard, and that tells you all you need to know about the sort of like relationship she has with her mum. It's very intermittent, and the mum's off doing her own thing.
yes, yes, absolutely. So she's had to grow up and be quite mature in comparison to the people she's going to school with, and she's going to school with some quite affluent people as well, isn't she? And then Darcy turning up. So that was interesting, I thought, because his family owns the castle, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they don't publicize it too much. So when he was sort of like going, I own the place. There was loads of well, she was the only dubious one, really. I mean, the others were just kind of going, yay, university boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm going to try and plug in my headphones because I feel like I'm echoing on you. But let me try and do that. Probably should have done that before we start, but we'll give it a
that's
try.
okay. Sorry, I was bobbing up and down. It's just I was wondering if Milo's okay, but he seems to have settled down again because he sort of
Oh,
like got up and started doing a wander around, and I was like, is he looking for something?
how
I was even looking for his chew on my desk, but it's in his bed, so it's all good.
this is the thing. Animals, they don't, they just don't know when you're online, do they? They don't really care. Right, let me just quickly headphones on. Right, can you hear me?
Yep,
Oh,
loud and
good.
clear. That's all good.
That's good. Headphones are on. Headphones are working. And probably no echo, hopefully. Right, so I sound really odd to myself now.
Yeah, but I can't hear any echo, so
Good.
I think it's good.
Yeah, my
Um,
lovely old-fashioned look.
it's good. I had that. I had to give it back to work, but I like my own ones.
Yeah,
So
yours are nicer. Mine are looking very old-fashioned. Bit Britney Spears at the moment. Right. Okay. So hopefully, if people are listening, that's sorted out any echoing or any noise that's gone on. Okay.
going back to what you were saying about Emma being conscientious and everything, I thought she's also very systematic, and that comes down to that whole idea of her being really quite structured because she hasn't got you know, her parents aren't necessarily structured, even though the dad is in this academic position. She is actually the more organized of all three of them, and so her approach to testing out the book is really quite scientific or methodical. You know, like she's like, if I try writing this, what will happen? So it's about the consequences of what you do with this particular book.
Yeah, and the different things that she did to try it out, and the way that actually that the first thing that she realizes isn't it to do with her? Is it to do with the lion? Is it a lion that she summons?
Was that first? I don't know if the lines first or whether it was the romance between the two teachers. I can't tell which came first, but potential. I mean, the lion was fantastic.
Yeah, that was a very odd. And that's kind of when she realizes that she's kind of put them in danger and everything.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was interesting. And this whole idea, and I was like, well, it's a really fascinating idea. So, how, like, if you were reading it, what I was sitting there thinking, oh, what would I do with that book? You realize you're writing it, anything comes true. But then there are consequences to all of it, which is what she starts to realize.
Yeah.
Um, mm. And the romance with her friend was very Bingley and Jane, wasn't it? Her
Yes.
friend and Darcy's friend, because he goes off, doesn't he, at one point?
He does, due to a misunderstanding in the same way that Bingley did, so yes.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there was a bit of a twist as well because they didn't have in the Elizabeth Bennet Pride and Prejudice, we've got her feeling sorry for Wickham for quite a while until things, become clear. And I thought that that was far less the case here. It didn't take her very long. It definitely felt much shorter time because we're kind of thinking of Frederick or Friedrich as the Wickham character. And initially, she kind of thinks he's a really cool guy and quite likes him, but in the end he ends up being like the romance character for her sort of like nemesis, isn't it? I've forgotten
Yeah,
the rich girl's name, but
Helena.
yes. Yeah.
Helena. Yeah, I think the he's actually turned quite sinister. I felt like his
Yes, yeah.
was really shocking in some ways, the way, like, because I kept thinking, um because he kind of really flew, like he really went off on this dark pathway. It wasn't a light kind of switch, like a more light-hearted switch. It was quite dark, I thought, what happened with him as a
Well,
character.
certainly because so since we're in spoilers, her testing was a lot gentler. She's like, oh, what if I, write this? And he's kind of like, okay, I think this book has a particular power, and therefore I'm going to make people do this dangerous thing. And you're like, what?
Really dangerous. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was crazy. Like, it's a real switch of character. In the beginning, I kind of felt sorry for him because he had this, like, he was, against the odds. He kind of, he's off at university, but his family are not rich, and he's working on in the school for, because he like Emma, I think, was, I don't know if his family worked at the school, or I can't remember.
I don't think that they worked at the school, but he was working in the gardens because he needed to make extra money.
Yeah,
So, um, yeah,
because he had previously been a pupil at the school, I think, which is what I mean
yeah.
by, like, how he was a pupil there. I think maybe his, I'm not
I
sure. I
thought it
can't
was
remember.
I thought it was scholarship, but
Maybe,
I'm not sure.
maybe.
Yeah,
Um, Natalie's asking, this is an Austen retelling. Uh, Kind of. It's an
yeah,
Austen,
certain elements.
yeah, elements. So basically, it's kind of a homage to Austen, really, isn't it? It's like it's got
Yeah,
all these nods to Jane Austen's work. It's clearly someone who loves Austen's novels, who's written it. That Mechthild Glaser is, like, clearly a fan.
yeah,
So there's kind of more Austen. We were saying they're like Austen Easter eggs rather than it
yeah.
following a particular story. Um, yeah, and actually, talking about Jane Austen, it's the as it all turns out in the end, the character of the author, because we're getting these bits of the journal in between, aren't we? Which the structure of the novel is, you have the chapters with Emma and she's narrating the story, and then in between you have snippets of this journal being written in the Forgotten Book, presumably, and parts of it. Was it always the same person writing? I can't remember now.
In the
It-
Forgotten Book,
yeah,
just at
in
the
the sort of
start, the
snippets.
prologue, we had Gina. We had
Mm,
Gina describing her experience with the Forgotten Book because that prologue gives us a real it provides a sort of gothic element straight away to the start of the book. So when we go on to meet Emma, it goes into this everyday sort of feeling again, but in the background that there's going to be some sort of gothic elements to this, kind of like how we were saying, oh, I've forgotten her first name again, the Morland
Catherine
main
Morland.
character, yes, Catherine, when she starts, exploring Northanger Abbey and thinking,
Yes.
ooh, what happened? And yeah, so it kind of gives you that sort of suspense.
Mm, yeah.
But
And
rather than making fun of the gothic elements, which Jane Austen sort of did, this one sort of leans into it, I think. Yeah.
yes, it definitely leans into it. And so we have this kind of the story of the Forgotten Book running through, the sort of the magical element of it, and then we have alongside it the missing sister. So that's the other storyline that's running through, and then of
Yeah.
course the enemies to lovers kind of relationship between her and Darcy de Winter. Darcy de Winter, very dramatic name.
Yeah.
The name did make me laugh. I was like, very I don't know, yeah, very kind of like Mills and Boon kind of name,
Yeah.
old fashioned kind of name. But yeah, so they've got the sister. He's looking for his sister, and his sister went missing years before. Is that like 4 years before, if I
Yes.
remember
Yeah.
correctly? Hmm. So
Yeah.
why he's only coming back, I'm assuming, because of I can't remember if it's trauma that he hasn't come back and his parents don't want him to go back to the scene or something. So he lies to his parents about why he's gone back there, but he's going back to look for clues for his sister.
Yeah, and I think he had a feeling he was looking for her journal, which was one of the key issues that they had with each other, is when he goes into the library and she wants to beautify this library for the whole student body. And then the selfish guy comes in and starts saying, "Get out of the library. My family pretty much owns this whole school." So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was quite deeply unpleasant. It's very, very Darcy-like in the beginning. So yes, looking for the sister. So we've got these two parallel storylines running alongside. There was quite a lot going on in terms of keeping you engaged. I thought it actually moved at a good pace. I thought the pacing was quite good for it. And I actually liked her voice, the narrator of Emma, like the character of Emma as
Yeah.
the narrator for the story. So that was interesting. So then we get to kind of the magical elements, not just of the book, but the fawn. Should we talk a bit about the fawn? When
Yeah,
did that?
yeah,
Yeah, because that occurs when she's reading it. Someone in the journal mentions meeting a fawn.
yeah. And
So
and
she goes
talking
looking.
about various magical elements as well.
Mm,
So she starts to wonder, is a particular character in the school actually this immortal fawn character,
mm.
looking for connection and love and that sort of thing? Or and what would he do if he didn't find it? Is he behind the disappearance? That sort of thing. So it all gets very deep, and you start wondering yourself. You kind of like in Northanger Abbey, seeing, the different things in the shadows, kind of going, oh, maybe that's the fawn.
Yes, yes. So we start to, because she starts to like get suspicious of quite a lot of people, and so we start to then get suspicious on as well. And like you said, this kind of the gothic nature of it all, the kind of different things that are going on, the strangeness of it makes you suspicious of so many things, and in the end, massive spoiler, we
Yeah.
find out that kind of went nowhere, that
Yep.
storyline in a sense, which I think
It,
a lot of people in the Discord were disappointed by.
yeah, so the grand reveal was a grand reveal. It just wasn't what we thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And so that was, there was huge consensus on the Discord group that, what?
Yeah, where did that come from? Yeah, what was that about? Why was that even in? Actually, could you have removed the fawn and like just had
Not
this?
really. I kind of feel like it added to the suspense.
Mm,
It was the whole thing of what happened to Gina, and maybe it's got this, so in a way, you could say it is almost a red herring, but it did add to the suspense and the
yeah.
gothic feel and everything.
Mm.
And then it does add to the character development of one of Emma's teachers, doesn't it?
Yes, that's true. Yes, of course. And then of course, yeah. So the other big reveal in the book is to do with uh, some of the journal entries in the book, which are from an author, a famous author. Who did they know at the school that she'd been there to stay there at any point? They didn't, did they? I don't
I
think.
don't think so. No, no.
No. So the author's kind of entries and the author's kind of life very similar to Austen's in a way in little parts of it. So I think the fact that she was unmarried and she was staying with relatives, which I
Yeah.
think links quite closely to Jane Austen's own life. Um, yeah. So and the cat and what was the author's name? I've forgotten again.
Oh,
Miss
it's
Whitfield. Miss
yeah,
Whitfield.
Miss
Miss
Whitfield. Yeah.
Whitfield. And Miss Whitfield turns out to be not just the teacher, but the immortal author, um,
Yeah,
Miss Whitfield.
rather than the
Yeah,
mortal fawn,
yeah, yeah.
and how
So,
that came to be. So yeah.
mm, yeah, and then they finally figure out what's happened to Darcy's sister, um, and in the end, they do. It's a happy ending in the end, basically. So we get the sort of resolution of their relationship. We find out about the forgotten book a bit more about and we find out about the fawn, but the happy ending is at the very end they manage to track down his sister and find his sister, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Hmm.
But I thought that that particular element was quite well done because, to a certain extent, although it felt like a huge change in the character of Friedrich or Frederick, when he did this, writing some terrible stuff in the journal and kind of going, "Oh, I wonder if it will come true," ha ha ha, then you start thinking to yourself, "Gosh, he's not only just careless, but he's malicious, and what could he have done to Gina?" That sort of thing. So I think that was developed quite well in terms of the reveal of what happened to Gina. That was one of her personal sort of like elements to this book that I thought worked really well. But the most of the parts that I thought worked well in terms of the resolution, it felt like the ones that were the homage to Jane Austen. And then, oh, having said that, you talked about when the niece doesn't turn up. That's a Jane Austen element,
And I
and
was hoping that would happen because that's in Emma. Those the two spinsters. Well, it's actually a mother and a daughter, isn't it? In Emma, and they're spinsters, and they've got the niece turning up. So
yeah,
granddaughter slash niece, and they're they're some of the most humorous parts of Emma, and of course some of the most tragic parts of Emma as well. Um, but yeah, so for and Jane Fairfax is the heart of the mystery with Frank Churchill in Emma. So
yeah,
it was a real shame because I thought that actually is quite a good plot element to steal
yeah,
from
to
Austen.
follow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So but it
Yeah,
just
but
didn't happen.
there were just certain things in this book. I think there's something to do with the magic element as well. So we talked about how the fawn had a resolution, but just wasn't the one that we kind of felt was more intuitive.
Mhm.
And then there was also something around the magic, and I'm trying to remember. It wasn't fairies, was it? Gosh, it was something. There's another element, very similar and linked to the fawn, and I was like, I don't think we got a resolution to that. I'm
Mm.
gonna. It's been 2 months, so I can't
Yes, I
remember.
know.
But I
I'm
was
the
just
same.
like, oh, But yeah, so I kind of finished the book feeling like, okay, well, that's great that this happened with Gina, but I'm not that happy with the ending for the fawn, and I'm not quite sure that everything was resolved.
Mm.
So it kind of leaves you feeling a little bit um like that. It's sort of like something's missing just a bit,
Yes,
but
there
not
were. Yeah.
terrible.
No, no, not by any stretch of the imagination. There was basically almost too many elements in the book that she kind of wanted to include and didn't quite resolve
Yeah,
fully. But in terms of the storyline, the main storylines, in terms of the writing style, and we have to talk about the translation as well, then, because of course it's translated from German, and I just really enjoyed the way it was written. I thought it was really thoroughly a nice read, and a really good one to start our reading the Globe YA
yeah,
journey.
yeah.
Really, so yeah.
I mean, I'm saying it's a good one to start the Reading the Globe. Be aware that there's underage drinking. Well, it's not. I don't know what the age is in Germany now, but
This
it's
is the thing.
certainly
I
young
did
for the
wonder.
for the US.
Mm. It definitely was because there's so the elements of it that are probably culturally um kind of maybe a bit like make people raise their eyebrows a bit. The drinking, the underage drinking, it would be underage over here as well. But I will tell you now that she would be in sixth form over here, and she probably would be doing all that underage drinking here in the
Okay, so
UK.
in Germany, it is legal to consume alcohol. Beer and wine are legal at 16, but not spirits.
So so in this country, it's legal to consume it, but it's not legal to buy it.
Ah, okay.
Right, so basically that's what I remember from. I may be completely wrong, but you're not allowed to serve someone under the
Yep.
age of 18 with alcohol, but they can consume it legally. It's not that's not
Okay.
illegal.
So it looks like you can buy it at 16, not spirits, but beer and wine. And you can, at 14 and 15, drink some alcohol while supervised by a parent or guardian.
Well, that's no fun.
According to this.
Sorry. was terrible of me to say.
Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, I was like, okay, wow, she's just having her beer there and not handling it very well because she hadn't drunk before, had she? And so
But
it
also,
really just hit her.
there can be some very strong beers in Germany, as we know.
True, true, true.
It's not like drinking beer over here. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's like you go to you could get some very strong beers. But yes,
yeah,
yeah, 16 and 17-year-olds in the UK can drink beer, wine, or cider with a meal on a licensed premises when accompanied by an adult, but you can't purchase it yourself.
yeah. And
So
I
it's
mean, I won't make a huge thing of this, but there is breaking and entering. So although she's a really mature and quite grounded main character, she does get up to some interesting things.
yes, she does. There's a bit of breaking and entering. There's a getting quite drunk and passing out. And then, of course, there's the age difference, which I think came
Yes.
up in the Discord.
Yeah.
So she is, I keep thinking 16,
She is
and
16 and
yes,
he's 20.
right, and he's 20. And so for some people in the Discord, I think they were thinking that's a bit of a, it's not necessarily a big age gap. However, in terms of maturity and experience, it's
Yeah,
it's
especially.
sizable.
Yeah, so I think when we're thinking about classics, we're like, well, actually, it wouldn't be a big deal if you're reading Jane Austen. Of course, um, Mrs. Bennet was thrilled when Lydia, who was she 15,
Yeah,
eloped.
of course.
So it's a very different mindset then. But right now, I mean, at 16, you would kind of think, no, it's you'd want to be dating someone closer to your age, not someone who's in uni. But I mean, the way that she wrote it, they weren't necessarily rushing off with this unbridled passion and everything.
Yeah.
It was just like very nice, mild flirting. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think it was that's why it was when it's like it's definitely a teen book. So years ago we didn't have YA as a category. There's no such thing. It was teen, and there
Yeah.
was children's books, teens, then grown up books. That was it. And teen books were generally like this. There were kind of very mild romance in them,
Yeah.
or unless it was Judy Blume, in which case all bets were off, I suppose. But there were kind of you weren't going to run the risk of it being any kind of real sex scenes in it or anything like that. So
Yeah.
so this was perfectly for that kind of thing. It was fine. I think the
Yeah.
drinking was surprising for me because
Yeah.
I think it did surprise me because you don't often get that in that kind of book where it's going to be a bit milder on the romance side, and then you've got her getting blind drunk.
But perhaps
Yeah,
perhaps that's the bit, like we were saying at the start, it didn't feel necessarily hugely like a German book. But then this, teaches you something about Germany. You go onto Google and go, is she okay to be just, having a beer or whatever? And you go, oh yeah, yeah, totally legal.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's the same. It's a lot of people don't think over here that it's 18's when you can drink. It's not. It's when you can buy a drink. So when you can
Yeah.
legally buy a drink on a licensed premises, you can drink in a private home. I don't know what the age limit is on that actually, and you can also drink in a restaurant at 16 and 17 if your parents buy it for you. So like yeah, it's very different
Okay.
from the US where it's 21, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. All right. Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you for picking it for
No,
our first book
welcome.
because that was your suggestion, wasn't it? I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I picked, I'm not sure. Did I pick When
Our
Stars?
next
Was
book.
it our next one?
This one, you may have picked. I can't remember now. I can't remember who
It's
suggested
not
what,
the
but
translated one, it's the world literature
yeah.
one.
But this is one I'd
It's a
definitely
good one.
heard of and I'd wanted to read for a while. So it was a good choice. If it was your suggestion, it was a good choice, and I
No,
think
it's
it was.
probably it might have been yours because I do you know what? I picked so many books and then I only switched out a few and then I can't remember which ones. because it's like 25 books in
Yeah.
total for the Reading the Globe. So it's probably you, and if it is, I finished it too
Yeah, you finished
soon.
it.
Too soon because we got all the way to the end of May, but I couldn't stop myself. It's so good.
Yeah, I know when I pick it up, I'm going to want to sort of read it in one sitting. So it's, if you're not aware, it's a graphic novel, graphic memoir. So it's perfect for people April, and which is currently running at the moment.
Yeah,
And yeah, and Roz, your other co-host for Reading the Globe, is co-hosting People April, which is a
yeah,
celebration of memoir and biography. So this is the story of Omar Mohammed's time in a refugee camp in, I can't remember, in Kenya, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In Kenya, and the length of time because this refugee camp was only supposed to be there for like a year, really temporary because that's what people always think about refugee camps. But the reality of refugee camps these days is that they are set up for such a long time because of the amount of paperwork, the bureaucracy, the safety checks, and everything that has to go into it. And in effect, I was really, I won't talk too much about it, but I was really astounded about the scale of the camp.
Mm.
So yeah, it's very enlightening, and yeah,
And it's middle
it's good.
grade, which is
Mm,
great. Because I've been hearing I've heard about it mainly because I think lots of people in schools are reading it. So so which is great because it's raising kind of that more awareness of what that situation is like. So for younger children as well. Yeah, so that is the current read. Got a couple more comments just to show up because we just had a hello. Here we go. Can't join the chat. Wanted to say hi, let you know I'm watching. Hi. And Natalie said, yes, it's 21 in the US. Yeah, I thought as much. 21 for drinking. But
I
yeah.
I had to double check. So I'm being very I've got so many books that I'm reading at the moment, and then I was like, oh, if I join this read along, then I'm gonna have to get another book for this, and then another. And then I was like, do you know what? So this, as you said, fits with People April that Roz is doing with
Yep.
Brian and is it Books and
Yeah,
Bookers?
Elizabeth from Books and Bookhans and Books. Yeah.
Bookhands, yeah.
Mhm.
And it also fits for Charlie's. So
Yes,
the
red
losing
on the
weight,
cover.
because it's under, yeah, and red on the cover, and it's under the 400 pages. So
Yes,
it
it
also fits
is.
that.
Of course.
So yeah, different
Yeah.
different prompts, it fits.
Yeah, it fits for lots of them. And so, if you're not aware, Charlie Brooke is running Books for Bowel Cancer Readathon to raise awareness of the symptoms of bowel cancer, and each of the prompts is a symptom of bowel cancer. So, blood in your stool is red on the cover. Losing weight unexpectedly is
Yep.
a book under 400 pages. So it covers those because she's trying to share the symptoms of bowel cancer far and wide, make people more aware. So yes, there's a really great read-alongs that this fits for as well. And I would say it fits for Picture This, but it doesn't because we don't consider graphic novels and comic books for Picture This. It's kind of picture books
Oh,
only.
yep.
But if you kind of were like wanting to join in Picture This and you really felt picture books are too young for you, then I would be okay with you reading this one because this is one of our picks as well for Reading the Globe. So it fits for a lot of things. Really good.
Yep, and my doubling up continued because for Charlie's other prompt about noticing differences
Mm.
in the like recognizing the symptoms and then you notice the differences, she gave a prompt of read something different to your usual. And
Okay.
I usually stay away from like horror or body horror.
Mm.
And that actually overlaps with Reading the Globe Contemporary because the book for this month is A Sunny Place for Shady People by Argentine author Mariana Enriquez, and it's got body horror. So I've
Okay.
got some of that to look forward to.
So it's all fitting in. I imagine you're reading so many of these books for the Reading the Globe that you're kind of having to see where they fit in. But I imagine they fit in with quite a lot of different reading
It
events that
turns
you're
out
doing.
that they do, which is good.
Good for
So
you,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. It's been lovely to chat to you. I'm looking forward
yeah,
to our
it was
next one.
good.
It'll be over on your channel next time, won't it?
It will.
Um,
So I've got, and well, I don't think we have to go on to the next one, but I think the next one's also really
Kiki.
good. Yeah.
got it
You
here.
got it. Do you know what? I didn't realize I gave my hardback away. So I had it when it was, like reprinted a few years ago.
Ah,
I think it was reprinted like at the end of 2020 or in 2019, and it had been out of print for a bit. And then I gave that one away. So I'm going to get another one.
yeah, I was so excited to pick this up because I do love Studio Ghibli and I've never read Kiki's Delivery Service. In fact, I wasn't aware for a long time that it was a book first, but then a lot of their stuff is based on books first, isn't it? So some of it's very original, but Kiki was a yeah, book first. I'm very excited to read it because I love the film. So
Yep.
yeah,
And yeah, so definitely this one is so relatable as an adult, and that one is too, because I mean, the things they talk about in Kiki's Delivery Service, you kind of go, yeah, I get it. I get it, Kiki.
good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to both of them. Great. So I
Thank
can
you.
see. Let's see. Oh, someone says it. Hands up, Natalie. So Natalie, you're going to be joining us for for our next book, which is good.
Super.
And you can also take part in the Discord chat in between live shows. And yeah, I haven't been in there much. I'm terrible with Discord, but I will try and pop in more. You'll have to remind me,
No
Katja. I'll
worries.
try and pop in more, but I'm not very good at it. All right. Thank you for coming on. Look forward to
Thank
the next
you.
live chat. And yeah, happy reading, everybody. All right. Bye.